Welcome to Unleashed. I'm James Razile. Joining me today is Patreon's own.
Aaron Quinton, brought to you by Maruchan Instant Lunch. That's right. And thank you, James, for having me again.
Of course, thanks for being here. We got some cool stuff to talk about because earlier this week, Disney unveiled their. We're going to episode 126 of the main show's coming out with Brock and myself, and we talk about a different spin on this. But Disney unveiled their slate for the next 485 years, and there are three there are three Star Wars shows or films on there, but there are gaps. They're going to be every 2 years. We're going to get a new Disney Star Wars film. So, Aaron, what are you going to do in between those years?
Oh, wow, James. Thank you so much for asking me this question. I know that there's been a lot of folks on Twitter who have mentioned how old they're going to be. And
man.
I know, right? And God bless them. You know, may the force be with them always. And thank the Maker for those folks. But you know, here's the way I summed it up, James, and I shared this with you before in a different message. But you know, my son Noah, who's going to be 5 this summer, he's going to be like, you know, bar mitzvah age. He's going to be 12 years old when this next trilogy wraps up, and I can't wrap my mind around that. So I guess that's a weird way of saying I'm perfectly content with just the anticipation for the rise of Skywalker. I'm okay with just that, you know.
I agree because it's I was doing the math and wow, time is short is what I'll say about that one. Time is definitely short. But we were talking about this a little bit, and you have a very powerful video up on YouTube, on your YouTube channel, the Aaron Quinton YouTube channel, about
thank you,
about a character that means a lot to you. And I don't know how much detail you want to get into right now about the character, because this is what we're going to be talking a lot about. Do you want to just give a brief summary of this character and how much this character means to you? Very brief, just very brief, whatever you want.
Okay. I mean,
you can expand if you want, but we don't want to take away from your video.
Can you please tell the audience though? Because once again, like I mentioned in a video I just made, you know, there might be people out there in Chigasaki Beach in Japan who have never, ever experienced a Star Wars podcast before. So what character are you referring to, James?
I am referring to, of course, the one and only Chopper.
Okay, so Dave Filoni's secret character of Chopper is like, I think the floor is going to fall through. Of course. Let's talk about Chopper for an hour and 45 minutes.
An hour and 45 minutes minimum.
Let's do it.
No, of course, I'm talking about the one and only Ahsoka Tano.
Oh, Ahsoka Tano. Yes, absolutely. Yes. So she's near and dear to my heart, and so I'm gonna display the perfect segue here for you, actually. So, I've been having some new thoughts that I have not shared, even on Twitter, and about Ahsoka in the past 24 hours.
Interesting.
And so I'm going to share those with you, and here's the context, okay? So what would Ahsoka do is what Ashley Eckstein at Her Universe on Twitter asked this fan base a while ago. And you might think this, Ahsoka would not light a cigarette, right? So that's bad, right? But let me remind you folks that Ahsoka actually was tainted directly by the dark side of the Force via the son of the Father on Mortis. She is the only character, and I know this, you know, we could build her up into Mary Sue's status with the way I talk about her, and I'm okay with that. Let's Mary Sue away. She is the only Star Wars character besides Anakin himself, and maybe Luke Skywalker, and maybe Ben Solo, and maybe Rey. But my maybes get more trickled down, if you notice. But besides Anakin himself, who was touched directly by the dark side itself, and then brought back to life by the light side itself through Morai, or the daughter, on Mortis. And I'm glad you asked me about Ahsoka. I think it's a very strange question in a postmodern context, even for a fanboy like me. For someone to ask what would Ahsoka do, it implies other um, probably way more prominent figures in human history on Earth, right? That maybe we should abide by those figures more than Ahsoka Tano, as much of a fanboy as I am. Um, but what would Ahsoka do? She would endure, and I think that that's the primary function of this character. And whether or not there's a few detractors, there's not that many anymore. I look at her. I've mentioned this before as the glue, the canon glue that ties almost everything together. Just bear with me from a chronological point of view. That's all I'm saying. So I'm not saying that she's more important than in Luke or Anakin or Vader or Leia or Rey or Ben or Kylo Ren or whatever. But she does have this weird kind of fixture within the timeline in the chronology of holding things together in a way that no other character does.
No, I think I would have to agree with that because she's a funny character too. The way she kind of was sprung
Right.
on us, I don't know
Yeah.
how. I don't know if you remember when you first heard of this character, but my first
Let's talk
impression,
about that.
my
Yeah.
first impression was an interview with Dave Filoni. He said we have this new character, and I don't even think I remember the name. Like I wasn't paying attention, and she's Anakin's apprentice, and that right away turned me off of the character in a lot of ways because I was like, well, I mean,
Right.
she's not in the movies. Like, well, I don't care. Like, I don't care. I have no emotional attachment to this character. And then, of course, when that, I guess you call it a movie, when the first 4 episodes were released, I was really like, I don't know about this
I
one.
know.
And
I
how
know.
times have changed. What about yourself?
Well, my story, I told it kind of online before, but I need to make an admission. I made a video that was very private, and I made it public, and I made it private again. So I'll tell that story in brief here. So basically, there was a point in my life when the Clone Wars, Star Wars: The Clone Wars animated feature came out in the theaters, and specifically, I don't know if this matters to anybody out there, but I was in Virginia Beach, Virginia at the time, and I was in the U.S. Navy, and I neglected it. Like just like you're saying, I was like, what is this? Like it's like Pixar, Star Wars. Like I don't even know if I like. And I was one of those guys who was like, I don't even know if I like Pixar movies that much. And yeah, I know, right? Like I'm embarrassed to say that now, but um, you know, and I was like, what is George Lucas doing? Like, why didn't he do this live action? And I neglected it. And years later, to make it as short as possible, I heard about the Disney purchase of Lucasfilm, and I was all for it. I've kind of always been a Disney fan my whole life. I remember seeing Bambi when I was like 6 years old in the movies. It was like re-released a billion times, and it was one of those times. And I loved Sleeping Beauty, by the way. I loved Aladdin, and I loved Pocahontas, just for the record. Actually, Pocahontas still resonates with me deeply, and I see a mirror of Ahsoka and Pocahontas, by the way. I want to throw that out there. So that's kind of maybe a topic for another time. So to wrap this up, um, because of the Disney purchase, I went to StarWars.com. I saw these free online videos of the last arc of season 5 of the Clone Wars, and this is in 2012. I had just gotten out of the U.S. Navy, and it was a bad point in my life, and it really got me through. Seeing Ahsoka's final arc, I call it the Wrong Jedi arc. I was all cylinders were revving at that point. I was so excited. I was like, there's going to be a new sequel trilogy. I'm so glad George did this. He's getting older. Maybe he doesn't really have the time to deal with this shit. Excuse my language, but um, I was glad he sold it to Disney because that meant longevity. And then I found the Clone Wars in this kind of weird, backwards kind of way, and now I'm this diehard Clone Wars fan. I literally went out to Walmart and Target and bought all the seasons after I saw that last arc of season 5, and I binged it, and it helped me through a bad time in my life. And Ahsoka is a character who, when I first heard about her, I did not give her the time of day, and now I'm one of her biggest fans.
And right before we get to our main topic, when she showed up on Rebels, your reaction to that? Did you have one?
Wow. I had a realistic, real world reaction. I'll share in a second. But my first reaction was just guttural. It was just, I was just so ecstatic to see that not only Disney, Lucasfilm in that sense, but Dave Filoni himself wanted to continue this character forward. We were all wondering if Ahsoka even survived Order 66. We had no idea. We knew she left the Jedi Order. She was kind of kicked out, and then she kind of left, So on her own merits, she made her decision, and I'm proud of her, by the way. She saw something that Anakin started to see, and it took Yoda years to see, and Obi-Wan years to see, and perhaps none of the other Jedi even saw it. So to her credit, she was very insightful, and I'm proud that she left the Jedi Order. I know it's weird. I've always loved Jedi my whole life. I've been a Jedi kid since I was like 5, since my son's age, but I'm proud she did that. So when I saw that not only did she survive Order 66, but she was fundamental, right? And by the way, I got to say, I love Jimmy Smits, and I love Bail Organa. And to find out through Star Wars Rebels and the Ahsoka novel, because I feel like those two are kind of intertwined, that she became fundamental to the start of the Rebel Alliance, just as much as maybe Padme herself was. There are those deleted scenes, by the way, from Attack of the Clones and Revenge of the Sith that I don't think should have been deleted. I'm kind of praying for a director's cut. Maybe they can convince George to do something for the 4K box set. But there's scenes with Padme starting the Rebel Alliance, and I kind of feel like vicariously Dave Filoni showed us more of that through Ahsoka being fulcrum in Star Wars Rebels. So the real world end of it is, I have to be, frank, that I think Disney, Lucasfilm, and Dave himself realized that this character had become far more important than they anticipated. And to bring her into Star Wars Rebels meant keeping her in the current timeline. And whether that was fan service or not, I don't care, because that's the kind of fan service we need in Star Wars.
Absolutely. We have the characters, yet let's utilize them. So now let's move on. This new slate of Star Wars films has been released, movie every 2 years, and they're going to tide us over with these Disney Plus shows. We're going to have Mandalorian and Cassian Andor. But Dave Filoni is big time involved in The Mandalorian. He's coming back for the second season of The Mandalorian. So there's a lot going on there. Is this priming him up and priming us up for maybe in 2023 a live action Ahsoka Tano series? We don't know where she's gone, and we don't know where she's been. There's a ton of material they could use for that show. They can make it before the new trilogy. They can make it after the new trilogy. They can do whatever they want, because we don't know anything yet.
Oh, good grief. Oh, boy. Here's, there's consensus, and I want to get consensus out of the way. Is that okay, James?
Yep.
All right. Okay. So I bounced this off of, long ago in the past, off of Collider Jedi Council. And I've bounced this off of the Resistance broadcast. And in general, the consensus is that the period between, with these other Star Wars pundits that are well respected, might I add, that the consensus is that in between Return of the Jedi and The Force Awakens, that Disney is not going to, or Lucasfilm, because I think maybe we say Disney too
Yeah.
much, and maybe I do too, but Lucasfilm doesn't want to touch the big three. They don't want to, it's okay, for example, to have um, the old Han Solo and being Harrison Ford, right? And then for a prequel, have Alden Ehrenreich. And when you watch that chronologically, you're going to see Alden first. And then you're going to see nothing but Harrison Ford afterwards, including The Force Awakens, right? And that was one of the critiques of, actually, I posed this question myself to some other folks, like I said. And I don't really buy that. And here's why. Solo came out almost 40 years after the original Star Wars. And plenty of us accept Alden Ehrenreich as Han Solo. And if we need to recast Luke, Han, and Leia, and it's really only Luke and Leia, there's a lot of people out there, and a shout out to all my hashtag Sebastian Stan fans out there, because I know there's a ton of you, and maybe James and I will hashtag this Sebastian Stan, but I'm sure that man will have some time on his hands besides the Bucky and Falcon series on Disney Plus coming up in the next few years. We're not talking tomorrow. This could be 5 years from now. I don't see any reason in the world why Filoni would involve himself in something like The Mandalorian to not bridge the gaps between Return of the Jedi and The Force Awakens. Favreau himself said at the panel at Star Wars Celebration Chicago that this takes place about 5 years after Return of the Jedi. And I think there's tons of room in between. Now, an animated series is maybe more likely, okay? But not tying Ahsoka into the story why? Okay, maybe let me just say this. Why show her in the epilogue of Rebels and say it's after the Battle of Endor if you're not going to do this? I don't know. Let me leave it there.
That's a fair point. And what you're saying about recasting the characters and whatnot in those time periods,
I'm fine with it, but
and I don't even know if that's something that they would have to do for an Ahsoka anything, because who's to say that Ahsoka runs into any of them anyway? Luke maybe more than anybody. But,
yes.
But you could do a series without that interaction ever occurring, and now maybe we'd wanted to, but the way Filoni operates with this character, I don't think he would worry about that anyway. I think she is on a trajectory that we don't understand, and that's what I am so fascinated about with Ahsoka is where is she going? Like, what is her goal right now? You know what I mean? Like Filoni, like they've set her up from a Padawan to Ahsoka the White, and I'm curious, and I want to see that.
Well, James, what is Ahsoka the White? So, I mean,
I don't know.
Well, you tell me. No, you tell me. What do you think that means? Because I don't hear enough, because we all throw that around because it became a meme. And of course it refers back to Lord of the Rings and Gandalf and all that, right? But we all actually, I don't know if you all know, but Filoni is a huge Lord of the Rings fan as well. So, I mean, what do you think that means?
I've always thought that she died in that match against Vader. But what is death? Right?
Okay. So are you saying despite the World Between Worlds? So you still, I'm asking you, like, do you think, because this is a new idea, I haven't heard this yet, that despite what we saw in the World Between Worlds and the epilogue of Rebels, she died?
Yeah, I think she's died. But I don't know what she is anymore. I think she's dead. The World Between Worlds happened, but there's some kind of, those two events are connected. I don't know how, and she's transcended her physical form.
Okay, and you know what? I could buy that, because I don't think Filoni would introduce, and I want to predicate this, okay? So in Star Wars, I really believe that Star Wars Rebels is just as important to the canon as the Clone Wars.
For sure.
Okay? Maybe more in some ways, as far as lore is concerned, with the Force. And a lot of people call this character who called himself the Bendu, as if he was the right Bendu, like the only one. Okay, and I don't believe so. And I think that if you're on that level, like the Bendu was, you refer to yourself in the third person, right? In the royal we, like we are the Bendu. Okay, and he didn't say that, but I'm just saying, for example. So maybe you're right. You know, maybe Ahsoka did pass away and she's part of the Force, but maybe in a way that we don't quite understand yet because it hasn't really been spelled out for us yet in canon. And I want to say that for all those who don't understand, the idea of the Jedi Bendu is an old idea that George Lucas had that dates back to like 1975 when he was going over different drafts of his script for Star Wars 77 for A New Hope. And that was the original name of the Jedi Order. So for Filoni to bring the Bendu into Rebels and then kind of end Rebels with this weird world between worlds as a way of, I hate to say it, but saving Ahsoka.
Yeah.
You know, there's even a part of me, by the way, I love Kanan. Okay, I love Kanan Jarrus a lot. And for Ezra Bridger to be able to save Ahsoka and pull her out of her fight with Vader, even though in my mind she almost won that fight because she stabbed the ground that was already Chopper, like our joke earlier about Filoni playing Chopper and how he said, oh yeah, the floors might cave in. So to bring it full circle, the floors on the ground on Malachor was not stable. And Ahsoka remembered that from earlier in their journey there, and she stabs both of her sabers into the ground, and Vader falls through before he barely gets a swipe through, and this is right as Ezra pulls her out. You can tell I've watched this too many times.
There's no such thing.
But you're right. Maybe she would have died. And maybe in a way she did. But let's say she didn't, just for a moment.
Okay.
So let me push back here. Either way, what do you think of this idea that maybe she's transcended Jedi and Sith? Now, I'm not saying she's a gray Jedi. I don't like the H word, so I'll say I despise that term. So I'm not saying she's a gray Jedi, but what if she is a Bendu, so to speak, and that's a new group that we don't know enough about yet to judge carefully, but maybe that's what she is now, a Bendu.
That's where my head's at on her, and that's what I think Ahsoka the White is, essentially. She's more, maybe she's not full Bendu yet. She's on the path to Benduism.
On her way.
Yeah, she's
to
getting
Benduism.
To Benduism.
Hashtag Benduism.
I feel like that's what they're trying to
You
get
heard it
at.
here first.
She has of all the characters we know, the potential for her in a story. It could be the most intriguing series that we could get is learning about this character. Don't forget, she could appear on the Cassian Andor show like that. He was a Fulcrum, she's a Fulcrum. Like there are ties to her being on there. Then you could bring it after. There's her and Sabine. Like, what are they up to? We want to see that. In between that, after she gets pulled out of the worlds between worlds, where does she go? What does she do? If she transcended, how did she transcend?
Yeah.
There are an endless amount of possibilities with Ahsoka, and that means there's an endless amount of questions. And Filoni is just sitting there with probably a book like this of answers that no one will ever get to read but him. And then there's probably a bunch of answers that he goes, those aren't even there's no questions to those answers. Don't even ask them.
Right, right.
And I don't know if we'll ever get an Ahsoka series at all. You know, it seems live action, like you said, seems unlikely. animated possibly.
I don't think it's unlikely, and here's
More
why.
unlikely
So
than animated, I mean, though.
yeah, okay. So I would give it 70% odds that we will see a live action Ahsoka, one way, shape, and or form or another. So that means even just an appearance somewhere, whether it's a director's cut of Revenge of the Sith, whether it's in The Rise of Skywalker, whether it's in The Mandalorian or the Cassian series. But I would give it a 95% odds that we're going to see, obviously, another Ahsoka in an animated form.
Aside
Um,
from the Clone Wars season that's coming up, like aside from that.
oh, yeah,
Not, yeah,
besides
yeah,
that, yeah, absolutely. Not just Filoni, but I want to go back to George Lucas. So originally in Legends, and I had that whole thing that I'm doing called "There's Always Some Truth in Legends," and it's based on an Ahsoka quote when she takes Ezra and Kanan to Malachor. Malachor was originally in Legends Malachor 4. That's where there was this giant Mandalorian Jedi battle, but they kind of reinvented it as this being this place where there was a Sith temple and there was this giant Jedi Sith battle. And she says, Ahsoka says, there's always a bit of truth in Legends. Now, that doesn't really roll off the tongue, so I rolled with there's always some truth in Legends, but let's look at that for a moment, right? So, like Lucas did not have to do what he did. And here's what he did. He went to to Dave Filoni, and George said, Anakin Skywalker has a Padawan. And Filoni, and this is on the behind the scenes on the Clone Wars animated movie Blu-ray, which is really hard to get. So I know
I have it.
some of you have it. All right. It took me a while to track that down. So, and I know not everybody out there, all your listeners or your viewers might have access to that, but trust me, it's on YouTube. If you really want to find it, Dave Filoni says very specifically in more than one occasion that it was George Lucas's idea to give Anakin a Padawan in the Clone Wars series. Okay. And he wanted to call her Ashla. And Ashla is one of the two moons in Legends. There's Ashla and Bogan, and it kind of goes back to Joe Chim and Boaz in Masonry. Okay, and I'm going to throw some deep stuff at you for a moment here, and the twin pillars of Masonry, the twin moons of the original Sith home world, being Ashla and Bogan, representing the light and the dark, and so Lucas specifically wanted Anakin to have this Padawan that was like this epitome of the light side. Maybe to balance Anakin out, maybe to teach Anakin something. I don't know, but that should not be neglected. And when we go forward and we think about what they might do with this character, besides her popularity, besides even Dave Filoni's obvious investment in this character, George Lucas had a heavy hand in creating Ahsoka, and people I don't think, really understand that. Filoni gets all the credit for creating Ahsoka when it was George's idea. Filoni refined Ahsoka, but George came up with the idea.
Yeah, and the one thing that I love about Filoni is he mentions all that. He's like, well, this was Luke. He always goes back to good old George. He has no problems giving credit where credit's due, and saying, well, if you liked it, that wasn't me. That was actually George.
Right.
That's fine. You could credit me, but
Oh yeah.
Me. So he's all on board with that. Look, I can't believe if you would have told me the year the Clone Wars came out that I right now would be sitting here saying
You're breaking up.
we need an Ahsoka live action. I would call you a liar. But I'm sitting here right now telling you I want an Ahsoka live action. I think the Star Wars universe needs one, deserves one, and those stories are fruitful and necessary to the future of the galaxy.
Well, what about Ashley Eckstein? So I know it almost like cries like fanboyism at this point, but she started off as an actress, and I should have came more prepared here so I could ramble off to you, the name of the exact TV series that she starred in. Um, but she started off as an actual, normal actress or actor,
Yeah.
per se. Um, I'm going to do what Brock does, so I'm going to go ahead and yeah, shout out to Brock. So I'm going to go ahead and Google this while we're on air.
All right.
So Ashley Eckstein's IMDb. Here you go. But yeah, I'm not going to read all this. Good grief. So here we go. Sydney White.
It's a good one.
By the way, tons of animated series that she's voiced besides the Clone Wars that we don't know about. A lot of Marvel stuff, by the way, which would blow your mind. A lot of DC stuff. If you're curious at all, Superhero Girls, Supervillain High. How about Sophia the First? She's on that.
Great show.
Yeah, it is a great show, especially for kids. But if we go all the way back, I'm trying to find the series that. There we go. That's So Raven. So she was an actress on That So Raven, and she's not bad at all in live action, right? So she's pretty damn good. And when people refer to her as just a voice actress or a voice actor, it really, like, trust me, I knew she was an actor before I went to IMDb. But my point is that I want to have some references. She was a real actor before she was just a voice actor. And to say that she couldn't do it because people are ignorant of the fact that she did some real acting stuff in the past, and that was what her forte was, that blows my mind. And in a way, she's done so much for this community and so much for this character. I know she could pull it off. Obviously, things like head tails and montrals and all that kind of stuff is going to take probably CGI at this point, right? We're not going to go
Yeah. Why
full.
bother?
Yeah, I'm sure that they would have a practical device and then CGI on top of that to make it animated so it would flow with the movements of the actor. So beyond that, I don't see why they couldn't do it. I mean, you and I both saw Avengers Endgame, right?
I
Like,
saw it.
like, I mean, if they could pull that off, they could pull Ahsoka off in live action.
That's true.
So,
That's true.
I just think it's kind of silly. Like, I don't know. Now, I think maybe there's this old question, and maybe you can address it. How do you feel about this, James? When people say, "Oh, well, we don't really need it."
Well, we don't need any of it. That's that's what I say to that. What do we need? What do we need? I think though, of all the things we need is we need this, because if what you said is true, and I'm on that, I'm on board with that, where she is the glue of all of this, what's going on. Well, the glue's holding things together, and I need to know how it's holding it together. So
Yeah.
show me how that's happening.
Right.
And she's an intriguing character with this history that has partially been explored, partially not been explored. And because she's only been in, I mean, she has her book, but she's been in Clone Wars and Rebels.
Right.
They have an opportunity now to reveal her to an even larger audience. I mean, like, this is a character we have. You are going to, and then they will like that character, and then go back and discover the character through the other mediums that she is in.
Yeah, I couldn't have said it better myself. Yeah. I one of my only things that I'm kind of like really anticipating. What do you think of this thought? Now the likelihood, I don't know, like if it's more unlikely because of George Lucas himself or because of a reluctance to mess or tamper with the original trilogy or the sequel trilogy, right?
Mm-hmm.
The likelihood of them doing any kind of updates, because by the way, that scene 38 came out.
Yep.
from Fix It in Post. I was paying attention to those guys on YouTube for over a year. I know they were working on it for 2.5 years, but that was glorious. that's the kind of stuff where it really makes me scratch my head, and it makes me wonder, is anybody at Lucasfilm open to the idea of maybe one last super special edition? So although that may be unlikely, and therefore unlikely that we would see Ahsoka kind of pop into a special edition of like Revenge of the Sith, which I would like to see, but I don't think it's going to happen. Um, what do you think about that? Before I say anything else,
I wouldn't put her in Revenge of the Sith because of, well, let's find out where she ends on Clone Wars. But
right, right.
that's why, like, if she's, I don't think she would fit into Revenge of the Sith in any capacity because I think.
But Anakin, you missed the report on the Outer Rim sieges.
I think that I think they're going to write her off in a way where you're
right,
like, oh, that's why she's not there, right? So that original trilogy, I don't know. I think the special editions are done. I think they're done. I think that was George Lucas's thing. I think.
So even like that scene 38, you don't think that they would do something like that because of the fanfare?
No, I think they're content. I think they're like, they'll stick. You know what? If they want to give us that fanfare, make a movie and have Rey do a backflip over a tie. Bum 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 it up.
Bum 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 bum.
That's what.
No,
you know what I mean? Like
she's not gonna backflip over it. She's gonna land on
top of it. Yeah, you know what I mean.
And jump inside and sit next to him.
And
what are you talking about?
Have a huge makeout sesh.
Hashtag Bendemption.
Bendemption. Hashtag. All right, before we wrap this up, never tell me the odds. Ahsoka live action TV series 2023.
2023.
That is 4 years from now.
Ooh. Well, I mean, she ages gracefully, but I think Ashley Eckstein would be the right age for it. And a little makeup and some CGI can go a long way, like we saw in Endgame. Professor Hulk kind of proves that to everybody, if you ask me. But so I'm going to go ahead and give the odds at a live action Ahsoka show at 80% in 2023.
Nice.
That far out, 2023. Yes, sir.
That takes a couple of holocrons.
I will give. Yes, I'm going to put both my holocrons on the line on that bet. And you know what? If I'm wrong, here I'm going to up the ante. If I'm wrong, then I will make you a pizza, James. Homemade pizza.
I'm coming.
And it won't be Chicago style, though. Okay.
That's 4 years away. You better not start making it for a while. Well, I'm always down for pizza, so I'm hoping that happens. I'm gonna go 67%. I'm also high on it because look, Filoni, they got him in The Mandalorian. He's doing his live action. You are grooming him to make this. Ahsoka is his baby.
Yes.
Let him play in his sandbox of Ahsoka Tano.
Yes.
They're letting him do his thing. Let it happen. 63%. I want to go higher, but I got to stick there because I also think 2023 is not that far away.
I think that it might not be that far away. I want to go back again. I've said this many times on different videos and on Twitter many, many times. Anybody can fact check this all you want. Go ahead at Dave Filoni on Twitter. Christmas 2018, he put up a sketch. I love his sketches. They're inspiring to me. They inspire my sketches. And of Ahsoka with her long head tails all the way down to her toes, which implies that she's super old, which implies that she maybe survives to the end of the sequel trilogy. Okay, so that's important, right, for a Togruta's age. Why would he do this? And he did quote The Lord of the Rings, and the quote was about going to places that he's never gone before. I know it sounds kind of like Star Trek, but if you read the quote and if you look at his sketch, I think he's implying that he himself may be working on The Mandalorian. Sure, maybe that's what he was referring to. But then why not do a sketch of Sabine Wren, right? Why not do a sketch of a Mandalorian helmet? Why do a sketch of Ahsoka with these long head tails, standing on the top of a pine tree? He knows how important she is to his fans and Ahsoka's fans. So I don't think that he's going to imply that he's embarking on this historic journey in his own career and then, associate Ahsoka with that journey if it was for no reason. That's why I'm putting the odds so high. yeah, by 2023, we'll see Ahsoka in live action. Absolutely.
Take that one to the bank. Aaron, thanks so much for joining me on this episode of Unleashed.
Thank you so much for having me, James. Sorry about any interruptions there.
There were no interruptions. Where can everybody find you at?
Okay. Once again, I just wanted to thank you again, James, for having me here on the show. And everybody can find me at Aaron Quinton 78 on Twitter. And Aaron Quinton is just my name on YouTube. So if you want to check out my videos on YouTube, you can do that as well. And James, maybe we'll see you over on my channel one of these days.
Invite me.
You got it, buddy.
All right. Thanks, everybody, for watching. It's been a lot of fun. Ahsoka Tano, let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Is she going to get a live-action show in the near or distant future? Thanks so much for watching. Hope you have a great day. And as always, may the force of others be with you.
Always.
Hey scumbags, thanks for watching. Don't forget to give us a thumbs up on our video. As always, please subscribe to our YouTube channel, Rebel Scum Podcast, for all the latest videos.